The Hargrove Grand Hotel's marble lobby fell completely silent the moment the security supervisor's thick hand came down on the shoulder of a woman quietly reading near the fireplace. His voice carried easily across the polished stone floor. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me right now." Chief of Security Burton Hale had spotted what he thought was an easy situation to resolve. A black woman in her mid-40s, sitting alone in the premium lounge with a carry-on bag that looked, to his trained and thoroughly prejudiced eye, slightly out of place. He expected embarrassment. He expected quiet compliance. He expected her to shrink. What Burton Hale did not expect was the tall, silver-haired woman in a sharply cut civilian blazer who had just stepped away from the concierge desk and was now walking calmly, deliberately, back across the lobby toward them. A brigadier general of the United States Army, and Burton Hale was about to receive the most catastrophic education of his career. The Hargrove Grand occupied a full city block in the heart of Charlotte, North Carolina, in that particular district of Uptown, where old banking money and new tech money had decided, decades ago, to build their cathedrals side by side. The lobby alone was a statement: 18-foot ceilings, a cascading water feature made of hand-cut Tennessee limestone, and a fireplace wide enough to park a car in, framed by dark walnut shelving, lined with first edition books that no guest had ever actually opened. The lounge adjacent to the main desk was reserved for Platinum Circle members, the top tier of the hotel's loyalty program, and it was understood by the staff that the guests sitting in those deep leather chairs had paid handsomely for the right to be left alone. Dr. Renata Osei-Wakefield sat in one of those chairs and had been sitting in it for 40 minutes. At 46, she carried herself with the particular kind of stillness that comes not from passivity, but from complete internal authority. She was dressed simply: dark slacks, a cream blouse, a single strand of Akoya, pearls that had belonged to her grandmother, and she had her reading glasses on and a medical journal open in her lap, though her eyes had drifted from the pages to the warm amber light of the fire several minutes ago. Her mind was elsewhere. It was the kind of deliberate mental quiet she had learned to practice between surgeries, a decompression ritual that her chief resident had once described, only half joking, as Dr. Osei-Wakefield going offline. She was the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Carolina's Medical Center, a position she had held for 6 years after an earlier decade as a flight surgeon with the 18th Airborne Corps. Her hands, resting open on the arms of the chair, had repaired 17 hearts in the past month. Her carry-on sat at her feet, upright, tagged with the blue and gold luggage identifier of the hospital's physician travel account. She was staying one night before a conference in the morning where she was the keynote speaker. The conference was being held, with particular geographic irony, in the Hargrove. 3 floors above her, Burton Hale had been watching the lobby feed on the monitor in his security office and eating a ham sandwich when he noticed her. He had been chief of hotel security for 4 years, a title that had inflated his sense of institutional power to proportions wildly disproportionate to its actual scope. Before this, he had washed out of 2 different police departments, one in Greensboro, one in Concord. For reasons his personnel files described diplomatically as conducting consistent with departmental standards, and which his former supervisors would have described, less diplomatically, as a pattern of targeting people who couldn't fight back. The Hargrove had hired him anyway, because the regional manager at the time had been a friend of a friend and had not read the file closely enough. Hale set down his sandwich. He watched the woman by the fire. She hadn't checked in at the desk since he'd started watching. She was just sitting there, in the Platinum Lounge, alone. In Hale's mind, a calculation occurred that was less a conscious thought than a reflex, the kind of reflex that had been groomed and reinforced by years of unchecked behavior. He picked up his radio, told his junior officer to hold the desk, straightened his jacket, and took the elevator down. He walked across the lobby with the particular brand of aggressive purposefulness that security personnel deploy when they want other people to know they are doing something official. He came to a stop directly in front of Dr. Osei-Wakefield's chair and looked down at her over the architecture of his own self-importance. "Ma'am." His voice had the manufactured authority of a man who had learned that volume and certainty could substitute for legitimacy. "I'm going to need you to come with me right now." Renata looked up from her journal. She did not startle, she did not flush. She simply looked at the man the way she looked at anomalous EKG readings, with a calm, clinical attention that was more unsettling than any visible anger could have been. "Good evening," she said. "Is there a problem? We've had a complaint about someone in this area. This lounge is restricted to Platinum Circle members. I need to verify your credentials and ask you a few questions in the back office." Renata removed her reading glass slowly and folded them. "I am a Platinum Circle member. My reservation is under Osei-Wakefield. The front desk checked me in approximately 45 minutes ago. I was directed to this lounge by your colleague at the concierge station." She paused. "You are welcome to verify any of that before we take another step." Hale's jaw tightened. He had not expected pushback. He had expected the flush of embarrassment, the rapid standing up, the apologetic gathering of belongings. He had received, instead, a calm and precise recitation of facts that made his position suddenly feel less stable than it had on the way over. "Ma'am, I still need you to come with me." "On what basis?" Renata asked. Her voice had not changed in pitch or temperature. It was the voice of a woman who had delivered unwelcome diagnoses to frightened families and held steady through all of it. Hale leaned forward slightly, dropping his voice to the register that he had learned, in 4 years of this job and 2 failed careers before it, could make people feel like they were suddenly very much alone. "On the basis that I am the chief of security for this property, and I am asking you to cooperate with an active security concern. If you refuse, I am authorized to have you physically removed from this premises and contact the police. Now, are you going to come quietly, or are we going to do this the harder way?" The lounge had gone quiet. A businessman 2 chairs over had lowered his newspaper. A young couple sharing a dessert near the window had stopped talking. A hotel staffer crossing the lobby with a tray of water glasses had slowed to almost nothing, watching. Renata placed her journal on the side table with complete deliberateness. She set her glasses on top of it. She looked up at Burton Hale with an expression that contained, in perfect compression, 6 years of commanding an operating room, 10 years of service in environments where people shot at her, and 46 years of being asked, in one form or another, to make herself smaller for the comfort of people like this man. "I will not be coming with you," she said, "and I will not be leaving this lounge. I am a registered guest of this hotel, sitting in the amenity space I was directed to use, and I have done nothing to warrant this interaction. If you believe otherwise, I am asking you, formally, to state a specific reason." The quiet that followed had weight to it. Hale felt it. His face went from controlled officiousness to something pricklier and more dangerous, the expression of a man who has decided that being right matters less than not being defied. He reached for the small radio clip to his lapel. "I'm calling my team up." "That's your prerogative," Renata said. What Burton Hale did not see, because his back was to the main lobby entrance, was the tall woman in the blazer, who had just come back from the concierge desk and was now standing 12 feet away, watching everything. Brigadier General Constance Osei-Wakefield, retired, though the military bearing had never fully retired with her, stood 6 feet tall at 63 years old, with silver locks pinned back from a face that had, over the course of 4 decades, looked out from the bridges of military transports and across negotiating tables in 4 different conflict zones. She was Renata's mother. They were spending the night at the hotel together before the conference where Constance had been invited as a guest panelist. She had stepped away to ask the concierge about a restaurant recommendation for dinner. She had come back to this. Constance did not raise her voice. She did not move quickly. She walked across the lobby at the same measured pace she used for everything, and she came to stand beside Renata's chair and looked at Hale with the direct, unhurried attention of someone who had absolutely no concern about what happened next, and simply needed to understand exactly what was occurring in front of her. "I'm going to ask you to explain what you believe is happening here," Constance said. Her voice was low and entirely even, the kind of voice that had, over the years, caused colonels to straighten up and 4-star generals to choose their words carefully. "Start from the beginning." Hale turned. He registered the height, the posture, the quality of stillness in the older woman's eyes, and felt, though he could not have articulated why, the first whisper of concern. But he had been here before, or thought he had. He had talked his way through complaints and confrontations and union reps and regional managers, and he had always found a way out. "Ma'am, this is a security matter. I'm going to have to ask you not to interfere." "I am not interfering," Constance said. "I am standing next to my daughter, who is a registered guest at this hotel, and I am asking you to explain the basis for what appears to be an attempt to remove her from an amenity she is entitled to use." Hale blinked. Something recalibrated behind his eyes. "Your daughter?" "Yes." He looked from Constance to Renata and back. The physical resemblance, now that it was pointed out, was undeniable. The same strong cheekbones, the same quality of complete unflappable attention in both sets of eyes. He shifted his weight. "There was a complaint. From whom?" Constance asked. A pause. Hale didn't answer. "You approached my daughter without a named complainant, without a specific allegation, and without checking with your own front desk staff before initiating a confrontation." Constance let that land. "That is not a security response. That is something else entirely." The businessman with the newspaper had put it down completely. The hotel staffer with the water tray had retreated to the far wall and was watching with an expression caught somewhere between awe and anxiety. Two other guests at the far end of the lounge had their phones out, screens lit, pointed toward the fireplace. Hale made a decision he would spend a long time regretting. He decided that the way to survive this moment was to escalate it. "I am asking both of you to come with me to the security office," he said, his voice finding a harder edge. "Right now. If you refuse, I will contact the Charlotte PD and have you both removed." Constance looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Then she reached into the interior pocket of her blazer and removed her phone. She did not do it dramatically. She did not make a production of it. She simply unlocked it, scrolled to a name, and pressed call. Hale watched her. "Who are you calling?" "The regional vice president of Hargrove Hospitality Group," Constance said. "Her name is Sandra Beaumont-Cole. We served together on a Department of Defense Advisory Council for 3 years. I have her personal number." A brief pause, and then quietly into the phone. "Sandra, it's Constance. I'm sorry to call this late. I'm at the Charlotte property." Another pause. "Yes, that's why I called." The color that left Burton Hale's face did not come back. The 12 minutes that followed were, for Hale, an education in the architecture of consequence. Sandra Beaumont-Cole did not stay on the phone with Constance long. She didn't need to. Within 4 minutes of the call, the hotel's general manager, a precise and visibly unhappy man named Arthur Wren, appeared from the back corridor in a jacket he had clearly grabbed off a hook on his way out the door. Behind him was the front desk supervisor, who had already pulled up Renata's reservation on a tablet and was looking at it with an expression of resigned certainty. Wren took in the scene. Hale standing in the middle of the lounge, 2 women seated in perfect composure, half the lounge watching, multiple phones recording, and the muscles in his jaw performed a small involuntary calculation. "Mr. Hale," Wren said, and there was nothing in his voice that sounded like anything other than the end of something. "Step back, please." Hale stepped back. Wren turned to Renata and Constance. "Dr. Osei-Wakefield, General Osei-Wakefield. I am deeply sorry. I am Arthur Wren, General Manager of this property. There has been a profound failure of judgment here, and I take full responsibility for it on behalf of this hotel." Renata had not moved from her chair. She regarded Wren with the same measured attention she had given everything else that evening. "What I would like to know," she said, "is whether there was an actual complaint or whether your chief of security approached me without one." Wren looked at Hale. Hale said nothing. Wren's expression did not change, but something behind it shifted decisively. He turned to the front desk supervisor. "Pull the complaint log for the past 2 hours and bring it here." The supervisor returned in 90 seconds with a tablet, showing a blank complaint log. There was no complaint. Hale had walked across the lobby and confronted a woman in the Platinum Lounge with no complaint on record, no specific allegation, and no verification of any kind. He had done it because of what she looked like and where she was sitting, and some calcified reflex that had, until tonight, never cost him anything significant. "Mr. Hale," Wren said, turning to face him, with the full authority of someone who has just made a decision and feels entirely clean about it. "You are relieved of your duties effective immediately. Please surrender your credentials to the front desk and wait in the back office for HR." Hale opened his mouth, closed it. The room was still watching. The phones were still recording. There was no version of the next sentence that improved his position. He walked to the front desk and placed his badge and radio on the counter without a word. Wren personally escorted Renata and Constance to an upgraded suite on the 14th floor. He arranged for dinner to be sent up from the hotel restaurant at no charge, sent a written apology on hotel letterhead within the hour, and made 2 additional phone calls that night. One to Sandra Beaumont-Cole to update her, and one to the Hargrove corporate office to initiate a formal incident report. In the suite, over the hotel's surprisingly good sea bass and a bottle of wine from the minibar, Constance and Renata sat across from each other at the small dining table by the window. Below them, Charlotte's uptown grid glittered in orderly rows of light. "You didn't call me when it started," Constance said. "It wasn't an accusation, it was an observation." "I handled it," Renata said. "You did." Constance turned her wine glass slowly on the table. "You always do. That doesn't mean you have to." Renata was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about all the time someone like him did that to someone who didn't have our last name, who didn't have your number in their contacts." Constance nodded. "I know. The outcome shouldn't depend on who your mother is." "No," Constance agreed. "It shouldn't." The incident report that Ren filed that night triggered an internal audit of Hale's security records at the Hargrove Charlotte property. The auditor, a thorough woman from the corporate compliance division named Phyllis Oduya, pulled every incident report Hale had filed in 4 years. What she found took her 2 days to read and another day to categorize. 41 incidents logged. 27 of them involved black guests. In 22 of those 27, there was no verified complaint on record prior to Hale's approach, just a notation in his own log that he had observed suspicious behavior or conduct inconsistent with guest profile. The phrase "conduct inconsistent with guest profile" appeared 17 times in 4 years. Phyllis sent her summary to the regional VP and the corporate legal team simultaneously. Sandra Beaumont-Cole read it on a Saturday morning and then called her general counsel. Burton Hale received a certified letter 11 days after the incident. His employment was terminated, and the company was reserving the right to pursue legal action related to liability exposure created by his conduct. The 2 police departments that had let him go years earlier were contacted by a journalist who had heard about the Hargrove incident from one of the guests who had been in the lounge that night with a recording on their phone. The story ran in the Charlotte Observer and was picked up by 3 national outlets before the week was out. In the coverage, Renata declined to be interviewed. She issued a single written statement through the hospital's communications office. "I hope this prompts a serious examination of how such patterns develop unchecked, and of who bears the cost when they do. It is not the first time I have been treated this way. For many people in this country, it is simply Tuesday." The statement got more attention than the incident itself. At the conference the next morning, Renata had delivered her keynote on minimally invasive cardiac repair to a room of 800 physicians without mentioning the previous night at all. Constance sat in the 3rd row. When the applause began at the end, she did not look around at the room or the cameras. She looked at her daughter. What happened in the lobby of the Hargrove Grand on that Wednesday night was not, by any objective measure, the largest injustice that had ever been committed in a hotel lobby. No one was physically harmed. No one went to prison. The machinery of accountability moved slowly, as it usually does, and incompletely, as it almost always does. But it moved, and the reason it moved was not only because of who Renata Osei-Wakefield's mother happened to be, though that was the mechanism. It moved because 2 women declined to be made small. One in the quiet refusal to stand up from her chair, and one in the quiet decision to reach for her phone. Power does not always announce itself with insignia and ceremony. Sometimes it announces itself in the simple, immovable fact of a woman who has seen worse than this and is not afraid of what comes next. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something you've felt before, or made you think about something you hadn't thought about in a while, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below. Tell us what you think justice looks like when the cameras aren't rolling and the general isn't in the lobby. Subscribe to Echoes of Justice, and we will keep telling the stories that need to be told.